When Laura attended her aunt's 75th birthday party, she found herself overhearing conversations that made her uneasy. Friends and relatives were all trying to be kind, but their words sometimes carried unintended weight. She realized that people often thought they were being polite when they spoke about aging, yet the comments ended up sounding dismissive, condescending, or even insulting. As she reflected on the day, she recognized 14 polite ways people talked about aging that were actually rude. The first was saying, "You look great for your age." On the surface, it sounded like a compliment, but the hidden message suggested that aging automatically meant looking unattractive. Laura thought it would be better to simply say someone looked great, period, without tying it to years. The second was the phrase, "You're still young at heart." Though well-meaning, it implied that being older was inherently negative and that youth was the only way to describe vitality or spirit. Her aunt didn't need her joy compared to youth. Her joy was powerful at any age. Third came the backhanded comment, "I can't believe you're that old." While it seemed like surprise, it subtly framed aging as something shocking or undesirable, as though being in one's 70s was almost unnatural. Laura realized such remarks rarely made the listener feel proud. Instead, they spotlighted age as a burden. Fourth was telling someone, "You don't look your age." People meant it as flattery, but it actually reinforced stereotypes about what a certain age was supposed to look like. It was as if there were only one acceptable way to age, and looking different from that was an achievement. The fifth remark was, "You're aging gracefully." Though softer, it still carried the assumption that aging needed evaluation, like a test people either passed or failed. Laura saw her aunt smile politely at those words, though she wondered if deep down it felt more like a judgment than a kindness. Sixth was when people told older adults, "You're so inspiring." While admiration wasn't wrong, it often came across as patronizing when tied solely to someone's age. If her aunt took up painting, why should it be more inspiring than if a younger person did the same? The seventh was the frequent line, "You don't act your age." Supposed to be playful, it really suggested that being older meant behaving in a restricted way, as though joy, adventure, or silliness no longer belonged to seniors. Laura saw how unfair that idea was. Her aunt laughed and danced just like anyone else, and why shouldn't she? The eighth came from health-related comments like, "You're so active for your age." Again, the praise was wrapped in surprise, hinting that older adults should be sedentary or frail. The comment put limits on what was considered normal, reducing her aunt's choices to exceptions. Ninth was, "You're timeless." This one sounded flattering, yet it erased age altogether, as though acknowledging it openly was a bad thing. Laura felt that celebrating the years someone lived was far more meaningful than pretending they didn't exist. The 10th was when people said, "You haven't changed a bit." Often offered at reunions, it ignored the truth that everyone changes, and that growth and transformation are not flaws. Pretending otherwise only diminished the depth of someone's lived experience. 11th was the phrase, "You're not old," said with reassurance. It actually denied reality, suggesting that old was an insult rather than a natural stage of life. Laura thought about how powerful it could be if society embraced the word old with pride instead of avoidance. The 12th remark was, "You look so much younger than your friends." Comparing people not only sowed unnecessary competition, but also carried a subtle insult to others. It shifted the focus from appreciation to judgment. The 13th was, "You're so lucky you're still with us." Laura winced when she heard a distant cousin say this. Though it might have come from affection, it turned her aunt's existence into a surprise, as if her presence defied expectations. Life shouldn't be reduced to survival alone. Finally, the 14th was, "You've aged well." At first glance, it might seem like kindness, but it made aging sound like a process to be graded, with winners and losers. Her aunt, who had lived through decades of challenges, deserved recognition not for how she aged, but for who she was. By the end of the party, Laura realized that so many of these remarks came from a place of love, but also from a culture that feared or misunderstood aging. People tried to soften their words, yet in doing so, they reinforced the very stereotypes they hoped to avoid. Laura resolved that next time she spoke to her aunt, or any older person, She would drop the qualifiers, the comparisons, and the surprise. She would celebrate them not for their age, not despite their age, but simply for being who they were. That, she thought, was the truest form of respect.